let's flip a coin. Heads Carolina, tails California.
Hello, it's Andy Graham of the Ask Andy Show, and I got a kind of an interesting question from Joe today. And I answer, she's calling me the raw deal. I answer global questions. I've been to 90 countries, and I've traveled nonstop for 16 years. I stopped in the United States to see my mom. I want to show you two things. This is a grain bin. This is one farmer, okay? Each one of these bins, I don't know, they're pretty big ones, but the smaller one probably holds 12,000 bushels of corn. And so, golly, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 or 7 of these bins right here. I'm right across this August, and I'm right across the street from a field of soybeans, which is really high, and it's going to be producing a lot of things. When I was a kid, the corn they would have about 70 to 80 bushels to the acre. Now they're getting about closer to 250 to 300 or something like that to the acre because of irrigation. There's irrigation, plus they removed all the fences. I also want to show you this. This is called a Atlas strong shoulder mason jar. We call it a mason jar. I always call it a mason jar, but I've seen these all my life. My sister was canning some pickles the other day. Well, they call it canning, but it's really a jar, right? So they ought to call it jar. But this is storage of food for long-term for winter. Okay, now I'll stop and I'll start again with in a different location where I can sit down and talk. This is the Orland, Indiana, Fawn River. This is a fish hatchery. They grow fish. They actually, somehow make fish eggs, and then they, grow fish here. Not sure exactly how they do it, but there's like, I don't know, 15, 20 ponds here. This is just outside of Orland, Indiana, where I live. Okay, I'm back. I'm at the Orland Fawn River Fish Hatchery. This is a place where we used to put the canoes in to go down the river for a few days. Joe, she asked, this girl's pretty introspective, and I really want to celebrate her because, a lot of people just see a snapshot of the planet. They see one thing and they jump on it and run. And that's just not the way things work. The world is dynamic, okay? Things all work together. It's a big interplay. And one thing is not going to take down the whole planet, okay? So it's going to be, you'd have to have the whole collapse of everything at the same time. Okay, Joe, in the American alternative media, I don't really understand that. I guess it's whatever. But and in the prepper world, okay, I'm gonna stop here each time. The prepper world means they're preparing. There's people that are survivalists or preppers that are preparing for the end of the planet. Okay, they love to talk about how there is only a 3-day food supply in the U.S. supermarkets, which is a dangerous, fragile, just-in-time food delivery system dependent on internet and fuel. And with serious disruptions, it would cause chaos and disasters for all of us. Oh, doomsayers. Making people feel fearful is a great way to sell stuff. But I am questioning this whole line of thinking after watching your videos and all the snapshots you are showing us of the world. Hey, she's putting together the pieces, right? This is why I say she's very introspective. There seems to be a fraction of the supermarkets, food discount stores, restaurants, and street food overseas compared to the USA. Is that indeed true, or a misconception on my part? I'll read the whole thing before I go through some of this stuff. In Portland, Oregon, where I live, in both our city and suburbs, we are overflowing with food everywhere in comparison to the Latin American world, African and Asian videos I see on the internet. I lived in Las Vegas for years, and there was food absolutely everywhere. I lived in Manhattan for 11 years, and you can't walk a block without seeing a grocer or a restaurant street food. Contrary to what the preppers, alternative media say, it seems that they are never going to have food shortage they warn about. What do you think? The food shortage they warn about. Okay. I just showed you at the beginning of this video I showed you a fish hatchery. I showed you a storage bin, and these are grain bins where they store grain. They actually dry them too inside these grain bins, and they hold 12,000 bushels of corn each, and then or soybeans or whatever, you know, wheat, whatever, and all these different things. And I showed you a mason jar. Okay, when I was in Ethiopia, Ethiopia is known for a famine because they had a famine. And I'm sitting there going, man, there's stuff growing everywhere. Everywhere I go in Africa, they grow stuff. And you ask, how can they have a famine? Well, what they had was they had a drought, and then because there is no storage of food, same as Ilkabama, there's absolutely no storage. You can't hardly buy a can of, I mean, a can, the cost of canned, you know, like a can of corn there would cost me $1.75, and I can buy it here at Aldi's for about 50 cents. So it's 3 to 4 times the cost, and nobody buys it because it's way too expensive. But the concept of what they're talking about, the 3-day, you know, on delivery thing, is not, you know, you can buy commodities where you're buying futures. Basically, the farmers will hold this food in storage for, you know, a lot of the stuff they can hold in storage, especially the cattle and the things, not the cattle, but I mean the corn and the soybean and a lot of these staple products. They can hold these things for a year or so in storage. And so what they really do is, we have this stuff in the country, we just don't bring it to the store in short time. But the thing that I really want to point out is the mason jar. The mason jar is a system where we can vegetables and we put, you also have cans of, you know, you go into the supermarket and there'll be a whole big row full of canned vegetables, right? Canned fruits, canned this, canned meat, canned tuna, canned everything. And they don't have that in most of the places where I get. It's a very, very small section. What's actually growing right now is the cookie section, the package, the plastic package section where they got candy and stuff. The actual canned food, which is really what you need to survive if you're going to have a 3-day food supply shortage in the USA. My mother in her house has enough food at any given time for us to probably live, I mean, you know, according to how many is in the house, right? But I think right now she could probably live for at least 1 year on the food in her house, because she has a deep freezer, and she has 2 deep freezers and a lot of canned goods. She used to, when my mother was younger, we had a canned thing downstairs in the basement for my grandma, which she canned stuff, and she put them all through there. We don't store as much as we used to, but the thing is that what you'll find in these third world countries, the 200 poor countries on the planet, they don't have the money to store the stuff, and they don't have well, they don't have, for one thing, they don't have the need. Everything is just in time daily. And so everything you're eating is that day only, and after that, it's gone. You really don't, they don't have ways to preserve things. Now, they're getting refrigerators and things like this, but they still don't have packaging that, and, you know, they're not, you know, what do you call it, pasteurizing, or they're not heating things and then putting them in jars and preserving them. So there's no preservation of food at all. It's only do it. The only time I see this at all is a little bit in Africa on the salting of fish. They will dry it, then they'll salt it and things like this, and they'll save the fish for a longer period of time. Really quite nasty looking. But, you know, a can of tuna will stay for probably a year on the shelf and things. But, you know, of course, a lot of the people in Vilcabamba wanted to go organic and whatever, and they basically bought into any kind of trend there is. And I don't believe personally that it seems that they're never going to have food shortages they warn about. Well, I would rather be inside the United States if there's a food shortage, because the reason why we won World War II is because we had a lot of food. we had natural resources. America is just rich in soil and land and things. I mean, they're producing 300 bushels of corn to the acre here, and in Vilcabamba they would probably be producing maybe 50, 40. Okay, but they're really, what are they producing most? They're producing sugar cane. They're not producing, you know, there's not fields and fields and fields of vegetables as much as you would think there is. There are fields and fields of bananas, so they can export them to the United States. But they do grow a lot of vegetables, but they don't. They grow up more than there because the labor is cheaper. But you know, the technology and stuff has led us to be able to mass produce food. Am I worried at least about the United States? No. And mainly because we preserve foods. There's a difference between having food and preservation of food. Okay, the preservation of food is putting it in a 12,000 bushel corn, you know, bin, and then having resources to, you know, the fish hatchery is constantly creating new fish and whatever. And every time I come back to the United States, I'm swamped with the animals here, because in most of the countries they have just eaten, used, and denigrated everything there is. There's very little usage of ground. They really have not. They're behind the 8 ball. They're not ahead of the 8 ball. And serious disruptions. What's going to cause the serious disruptions is probably tweets where everybody believes the world's falling, right? The sky's falling. The world's become a very safe place, and contrary to what they say on the things, it's actually becoming incredibly safe. I mean, you can go anywhere and everywhere. And you're right, there is a fraction of the supermarkets, food supplies, discount stores. They don't have enough inventory in their grocery stores to last more than about 3 or 4 days, and you'll see that their supply train, the way they get their food to these places is, you know, you can live on, you know, there's only, say, in any given location where you're at, there's only 5 or 6 major crops that they're growing there. It's very difficult to have, you know, 20 different things and have tuna, like tuna or fish or anything. You're living in Vilcabamba, and it's, you know, 100 miles from the shore, and the beef is grown out in the woods or whatever, you know, up the fields back in the ways, right? There's not a supply chain. The supply chain in America is good, and rightly so. If, you know, if all of a sudden we had no gas, and it's the only thing I can worry about is that if Saudi Arabia decided to shut off all the gas to us, the United States would be broke in a couple weeks. But would we be starving? No. And would the price of everything go out of things? But you're really not, in my opinion, you're really being pretty sad, because you're looking at the world as being a bunch of evil people. And the world's not a bunch of evil people. The world is really, for the most part, some very nice people. The alternative media, there's some evil people there, okay? And I really, really want you to realize that a lot of these guys, anybody that's selling fear is got their glass, what, half empty or half full? I think it's half empty, right? To me, anybody that's selling you fear is really just stroking you to get traffic and things like that, and probably for them to make money. And then inevitably they have these products on the sideline that they say you have to buy to be prepared and all this stuff. Nothing wrong with being prudent and thinking about these things, but Joe, you're absolutely right. Food is everywhere in the United States, and it's not in the rest of the planet. I love when I come home because of the overabundance of selection. Okay, a lot of these places where you go, there's just not much selection of food, and sadly, most of the countries where I go to, they're eating way too much starches and things like this. They don't have as much. Like in most of the world, they're eating a lot of rice. I would suppose Central and South America would go relatively you know, they would really have food problems because the rice is not grown there. They grow it usually in, you know, Southeast Asia and stuff like this, and they're importing rice at such a high level, and they're importing wheat at such a high level, and these are some of their staple crops. Potatoes they had, but you know, it's just not right. It's just not. These people are taking one statistic that they can say like three days. Of course, they can't put all the stuff in the grocery stores in the same day because there's so much in the grocery store. There's only a 3-day supply in a grocery store. That's smart, and the food has to be fresh, and the food has to be there. But what they're selling is fear. I wouldn't advise anybody to read what is it, A State of Fear by Michael Crichton. It's a very good book about how everything is, you know, everything's catastrophized. Everything you do is created into a thing. And the alternative media, they're a bunch of negative people. And I really think that we really need to grow up and look around you and see from step 1 to step 5 where the food's at. If you want to know where the food is at in Orland, Indiana, it's everywhere. But a lot of you guys are city kids, right? And I realized I have some prejudice against city kids because they really are naive on how the planet works. They always look at things as like if you're not cool if you don't have a Apple iPod or something like that. And the farm boys really don't like this, but what can we do? Here I am on the Fawn River, town of 400 people, and it's paradise, guys. Don't listen to these fearmongers. They're full of shit.
We